Lou Carter. Oh, I'm Lou Carter. Sorry, that's come up. I'm Lou Carter, one of the Assistant Directors in Children's Services in East Sussex County Council. I also have the pleasure of chairing our Corporate Equalities Group, and so was delighted to be asked to open this webinar today. So a very warm welcome to everybody, and especially to our guests from Diversity Resource International, to what I know will be a fascinating and thought-provoking session, hearing from the 7 local community researchers about the issues that have mattered to them. So I think you've already heard that little message come up, haven't you? Please note that we will be recording the session, and that's really to share it with any staff that were not able to attend. Please do feel free to have your cameras on or off, but do keep your sound on mute unless you're going to be talking, obviously. So just a little context to begin with. This is the first event for staff to mark National Inclusion Week, which begins actually on the 27th of September. So this one is a little early to make sure that all of our guests could be here. Please do look out for other talks. They'll be advertised on Yammer, including on our new Equality, Diversity, Inclusion group, now open to all staff. So do join that if you haven't already. So to introduce today's session, Diversity Resource International is a long-standing local social enterprise founded back, would you believe it, in 2004. Its goals and principles are all about empowerment, developing and supporting leaders, and offering safe and creative learning environments. I'm really pleased to welcome 2 people who will introduce the session in a moment. Mebrak Ghebreweldi, the founder and director of DRI, and Dr. Asare, a senior lecturer at Brighton University. Yar actually facilitated the course that supported the 7 volunteers to become community researchers. Their work is a great achievement, especially in the year that's had so many challenges, so well done to everybody. Now I'll pass over to Mebrak and Yar to start the session, explain a little bit more about the project and to introduce us to the community researchers so we can hear about their projects. Because I can't stay for the whole session, Patrick, and I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly, Nyikavaranda, who is working towards a PhD at Brighton and Sussex Medical School and is the new director of DRI, will close the session for us after all the presentations and any questions you have. I hope that makes sense, but mostly thank you very much for joining us today and taking the time to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic introduction, Lou. So I'm Asare, and I'm just going to present the community researchers and say a little something about the background. So between early June and early August, a group of 7 people got together on Zoom. They were all active in their own communities as interpreters, bilingual advocates, and activists in minoritized communities. They learnt basic research skills, research ethics, doing interviews and focus groups, and carrying out literature reviews. We also had talks during the course from other researchers and from those other people working with minoritized communities. The community researchers chose their own research topics, inspired by their own life experiences and concerns. The strength of this programme is that it provides research from researchers who are trusted and known in their own communities. And this research and future research offers an insider's perspective, so that rather than research being conducted about us as minoritized communities, this research initiates from us. As such, it has an energy and a relevance that is rare in research. We hope you will enjoy listening to these pieces of research, and we hope that you will take relevant knowledge from this into your own practice. So Mebrak, would you like to say something as well?
I think regarding the research, I wouldn't mess up your presentation, so I'll leave it. But I just want to say that Dr. Ya is also the founder of DRI, so she's a director of DRI. We co-founded DRI between me and Dr. Ya. Also, Mamta is, one of our going out director. She's been helping us during this difficult COVID lockdown, but she moved to Scotland. But I want to recognize her contribution to DRI, and we having an incoming director, Patrick, who is doing the closing remarks. So I just want to recognize it's a collective between the directors, the founders, the incoming, the outgoing, and all the communities, the bilingual advocates and the community researchers now. DRI has made it till now. So it's great to see that now we're sharing DRI with public professionals of East Sussex. This is what we want to do, and I feel proud that we all come together to make a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mebrak. So without further ado, let's carry on and let's listen to the research. So every researcher is going to speak for 10 minutes about their research, and then there'll be 5 minutes for questions after each presentation. So we begin with Wang, Mandarin study for BBC, British-born Chinese children.
Sorry, it's okay. Hi everyone, thanks to be here and very glad to meet you all. My name is Li. I'm a Mandarin interpreter, a bilingual advocate, and now also can call myself a community researcher as well. And my topic today I'm presenting to everyone is the Mandarin study for the BBC, which means British-born Chinese children. And you may want to know, why do I choose this topic? It is mainly based on my, sorry, do I share screen with everyone? Or just, I can't really move to the next slide.
If you ask Alejandra, she'll move it for you when you're ready, Lee.
Okay, yes. Okay, so yeah, it is mainly based on my personal experience. This year, my older son, he had his GCSE exam, and I did contact the school, ask for information, which I didn't really get anything out of it. So when I did this research course, I decided to choose this topic. And the purpose of this research is to try to share the views of Chinese parents and try to make the school aware that they actually have the duty to support the Mandarin Chinese study and the exam preparation. Okay, and people study Mandarin for so many different reasons, visiting China and work in China. For the parents, they have very, very practical reason. They want to use children to help them in the daily life, acting as interpreter and translator. I know many of you here, you don't agree with me. Oh no, this is not practical. This is not professional. I mean, it's not professional. They shouldn't use their own children to act as interpreter and the translator. But this is reality. When they go to GP, when they go to a hospital appointment, there is no interpreting or translation available for them. What can they do? They have to use their children. So that is really the main reason. And another reason, we all have families back home. For the older generation, they don't really speak English. So when they want to talk grandparents, aunties, uncles, then they have to use their Mandarin in Mandarin language scale. And I have interviewed, a few parents, and we all have the same feeling about why the kids can't really get help from the school, or what is in the way of Chinese Mandarin study. And of course, there's nothing about the no help from the school, and there's no material available and no guidelines. And as part of my research, and I've done a literature review, and these points just based on the fact which I have found. And my focus would be get your attention to the huge government investment and Mandarin Excellent program. talk about a huge government investment, there is a huge number. And we talk about 10 million, which is really, I was shocked when I actually saw that number. Such a big amount of investment into Chinese Mandarin study, actually just in England. It's not in any other area, just England. And to cooperate with the investment, there also is a program called Mandarin Excellent Program, which is delivered by the Confucius Institute and on behalf of Department of Education and in partnership with British Council. And well, you know, the program is there, investment is there, and how the Chinese community can benefit from it. That actually is my point as well, is my research point as well. Can we just move down? Okay. Yes, this is just giving you a little bit more detail about that investment and what the government aim to do. And there's a timeline there as well, 2020, but now it's 2021. We haven't heard anything about it. And the latest report I was funding, it was 2019, and after that there was no follow-up. But if you want to know more, I have can go back to read my report, and I have references at the back. You can just do more reading. And research method, and I have asked questions about the parents, and basic 6 questions. And I've been working for the community for many years, so know the community very well. And they all happy to share their views with me. And mainly I interviewed the 6 moms. And when we talk with them, of course, I have to consider the ethical side as well. So which would be the 4 sides I consider is competence, responsiveness, trust, and confidentiality. And findings and analysis. And there's more, and it's just the 4 main points I would like to share with everyone here. And the parents, since they don't get any help from school, they will ask themselves, do I have the skills and abilities to teach my own children? And most of them, they say no. And so far, I'm probably the only one who actually, you know, taught my own boy, helped him go through the GCSE. And we are very proud of him. And he got 9 in his GCSE Mandarin, so which is really good. And when they couldn't get help, how do they cope with the study? And different parents have different ways. Some they just purely depend on the kids, you know, when they want to do it, whichever way they want to do it, just up to them. And some they're thinking, oh, we may get some like a private tutor, which is really expensive. It's for most people, it's just too expensive to afford. And of course, there are other materials you could use online, YouTube, yes, but they are not really like study exam focused. And
2
also,
more minutes, Lee. 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay. So the teaching method is different. Here we praise children more, and back home we criticize them more. So even as you are a good teacher in China, that means you can't really teach the children here. And the mixed feeling to the answer to the last question. Some parents think, yes, the school has a duty to help. And some think, no, they don't really have, because it's not a GCSE exam choice. Yeah, and it's 6 parents interpreted my research, and I would like to say thanks to them, you know, for their contribution. And we found the problems, and we also made a few recommendations. So the school, they can provide some study materials, at least to give them some guidelines like specifications, and to tell the kids what you expect from the exam, like listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So at least they have the direction, they can just prepare themselves. This is at least the same problem the school could do. The last bit will be my references. So if you need to find a little bit more, you can just go to references. And of course, this is a very short and a very brief presentation, and the full report is available as well. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. We've got 5 minutes for any questions that anyone has. We can probably just take a couple of questions in that time. So has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask Lee? Do you just want to unmute yourself if you have a question? I can't see any. Sarah, do you have a question?
Well, really, I just wondered your point, Lee, about how parents not feeling that they've got the sort of the skills and ability to support their children, because obviously they're not necessarily trained teachers. I mean, are people just sort of having a go? Are they trying to do it? And how does it make them feel, I suppose?
As parents, I talked to 6 moms. They all want their children to do GCSE exam. Some, they literally sign up the children for the online courses, and some like just home study. But as a parents, the education level is not high enough to help. So they just trying to find different ways. Most of them, pretty much all of them, they prefer face-to-face tuition, and they even mentioned that we would like to, contribute the small fee to school if they can just help in any ways. So that is what their idea is,
Right, thank you. Yeah, really difficult. Thank you very much.
And Ryan, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Given that the overall investment from the government is, when you spread it out across the country, very small, what in terms of practical elements, in terms of resources, do you think can be done by local groups, by local authorities, and by other organisations to support children in situations such as the ones that you're seeing?
We actually, Hastings, I don't know any other areas. Hastings, we actually still have the Chinese school. I think for them, the funding is a problem. They just don't have a proper teacher and they grab whoever is available, to be honest, and it's no structured and it's not much help as well. And it's not like a charity, it's difficult. I even met the chair, her yesterday. She was trying to open a bank account for the community. It's the bank just turn her down. So if you don't have a proper bank account, you can't really apply for the fundings. And just like the children pay at 40, 50 a term. So which is, you can't really pay like £8 for a teacher. So who is actually happy to teach you during the weekends with that little bit of money, which I did a few years, just purely, it's more like voluntary work for me, and I want to teach the children there and teach my own children as well, keep the culture there, keep going on. So really for the money, it's nobody willing to do it. So it's all about the funding. They can't get enough funding, don't have a proper material, don't have a teaching staff. So we still have the school here, but we used to teach GCSE, actually I did a few years, and now it's only like 4 or 5 children left. It's only the entry level. The older ones, they are kind of like not much for them to do, and we couldn't afford to open a class here.
Thank you, Lee. And as you've probably realised, this is an ongoing issue. So if anyone has got any support, any ideas, or would like to get involved in any way, please contact DRI, and we're supporting Lee to take this forward. Thank you so much, Lee. So our next presentation is from Alejandra, and Alejandra is talking about how do ethnic minorities keep the identity of their country of origin while adapting to the UK? Alejandra, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, my name is Alejandra. I am originally from Spain, And I originally was formed as a bilingual secretary in French and English, but then very soon I moved to Ireland, where I gained experience in a different culture, and especially also in European cultures. Then when I married and moved to England, and then got to do the community interpreting course with DRI and work for Bandu, I got a much broader experience with languages and different cultures and the needs of those BME communities. So my research is going to be based on how do ethnic minorities keep the identity of their country of origin while adapting to the UK. So as I said, this is something that I was always interested about, not only because I have lived experience of that question, but also because I'm really interested in what people from other communities had to say about it. With relation to the literature review, I took the 3 different pieces. And I mean, I won't have time to go into each one of them because of the time frame, but you will see it on the final report. But these 3 pieces of literature have helped to see what other people have written in relation to identity when people live abroad, and also when they return to their country of origin. I have, you will see in the report that I have related myself to many of the questions that were mentioned in those literature review. But as I said, I won't have much time to go into, so I will go directly into the findings. In the research method, I actually did interview to 6 women from different countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. They live in the UK between 10 to 30 years. And none of them knew each other. And the focus group was, well, the interviews were done up to 3 of them only. And the focus group was for the 6 of them. Within the interviews, I mean, I asked many questions. How long have you been living in the UK? What is this to adapt to the UK? What do you consider to be your home and why? And they had plenty of time to share their views. And they felt so comfortable actually meeting and talking about this type of questions that they wanted to meet afterwards for a coffee at some point. So within the research, obviously, we use the ethics of care principles, and I cover the attentiveness, competence, and trustworthy by using convenient time to the participants, by agreeing to and stick to the time given, and by giving them the consent form and the questions beforehand, so they knew what they were going to get into. With regards findings, I actually base my findings and focus in 3 different areas: identity, barriers, and belonging. Identity is very much influenced by the place where you are born, the culture, the language, the education, etc. And identity changes as you grow up, but also as you are exposed to other cultures and ways of life. The lady from Latin America, she mentioned that she was shocked by the amount of languages and people from different cultures at first when she arrived to the UK, but it was the actual diversity that made her to adapt reasonably quick. Then you had somebody from Europe who had this kind of a stereotype view of what British should be like. She thought that the people drink tea at 4 o'clock and had biscuits, and then when she arrived, she realized that that was very far from the reality, that people in Britain drink tea anytime as a comfort drink, and that there were as many English accents as foreign people living here. Then with regards barriers, language was a barrier for most of the participants when they just arrived to the UK. There was only one lady from Africa who actually didn't have that problem, and she used that to her advantage because her preparation and qualifications with with her own country prepare her with to have a very native language. So when it comes to, but as most of the participants found language as a barrier, I mean, when you arrive to a country, having difficulties in accessing a job that could give you the basic needs to provide for yourself and for your family can have a huge impact, you know. And when the basics are met, your confidence grows. But if the basics are not there, it will impact on your self-esteem and eventually on your mental health. And so that was something that we all spoke about, and the different difficulties that they all experienced through the years while adapting to the UK in relation to language. There was one of the ladies from Aisha who says, because of my lack of English, I had to look for lower pay type of jobs. My qualifications from Asia didn't mean anything during that time. She didn't see it as something negative, because at the end, she was able to have other type of experience through other jobs. But it also, one of the ladies from Africa, she did mention that sometimes, even if you have a perfect, if you say language, English language, you still, in some places, they will find difficult if you don't have the proper accent. So so it still was a barrier to some of the people I interviewed, regardless the amount of years they've been here, and regardless they felt they had a very good English. Another aspect that I looked at, it was belonging. The sense of belonging was very much related for all the participants to where their family was based. So the lady from Africa, she said that UK is certainly my home, not only because I made a living here, but also because my whole family is here. So, but then there were other participants who their home was where the country of origin was, because their family of origin was there. So they, at the end, they all have different answers with relation to that question, but it was always based on where their family was.
2 minutes, Alejandra.
Okay, so discussions and conclusions. People's identity from the country of origin is not lost, but evolves. It opens up your mind to new ways of thinking while adapting some of the new to your own autochthonous ones. Whether you feel the UK is now your home or not, you will always be shaped in many ways by the country you come from. Living abroad makes you more resilient because of facing barriers and difficulties. That's when keeping your identity of origin is useful, and it gives you a sense of belonging, confidence in who you are, and the push to overcome any difficulties. And recommendations. Keeping your identity of origin while adapting to new ways of life is possible once you overcome the first cultural shock. It keeps you rooted while ready to absorb a new culture, but it also, I will add, it takes an effort from yourself. Funders may seek to fund projects that celebrate culture and encourage communities to learn from one another, provide opportunities for multilingual individuals to adapt in host communities to teaching their native language, and encourage and support uptake of foreign languages in schools. And I just want to thank, well, first of all, to thank Dr. Ya for being our tutor, and to Mebrak for giving this opportunity to me and to all of us to take this course. And thank you also to my colleagues for their input during the course, and to all the research participants, which are not here, but they will see the report soon. And thank you to all of you who are attending this meeting.
And thank you to Alejandra. Fantastic. It's a really interesting perspective there. Has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask Alejandra? Oh, someone's got their hand up. Gulu?
Yes, lovely. Thank you. Just a quick one for me. I mean, it just emphasizes to me the importance of considering identity when we work with people from different backgrounds. But just a question really, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this. It was interesting you decided to interview women. Do you think you would have got different answers if you'd interviewed men or even children, perhaps, that were part of those families as well?
Well, if you interview children, for sure it will be a different answer because they will say from a different perspective. Also because most of the women that I interviewed, they were being here more, precisely between 10 and 30, but most of them, they were 20, 25 years here. The children maybe wouldn't have been that long. So it will be a different answer to that. And also because they would have been immersed maybe through school and everything else within the English language and culture. So they will say totally differently from the parents. With regards women and men, well, we do see things differently, but I cannot answer that question because I didn't interview men. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lou. And Gulu?
Yeah, just wanted to check really. Pride of where you come from at times does get muddled up with wanting to belong to your new country, and in this case here being the UK. Did your participants ever express any difficulties, probably from the local natives or the local population here in the country, who are not accepting them, especially when they want to stick to their identity, or when they express how they still want to be seen probably as Spanish instead of actually being seen as British, especially if they've actually naturalized? Did they express any views about having those problems? Because there are times, of course, when the local population will probably want your loyalty, want you to identify with the new adopted country.
Some of them, they mentioned, well, one of them mentioned that at first she felt that in some way she had to act as I will say a British way, because she came from Latin America and she felt that, or they felt that she was too loud, that she was, so her way of being in some ways was not accepted at first within the British community in the workplace, where she was told to tone down her way of being, her. So yes, it was mentioned by some of them.
Thank you. So thank you, Alejandra, and thank you, Gulu and Lou for those questions as well. And if we weren't so short of time, I think the conversation could actually build and develop. Thank you so much, Alejandra, for presenting your research. It's obviously stimulated quite a bit of thought already. So now we have Mebrak. So Mebrak's research was, to what extent are UK's middle-class consumers aware of the global inequalities associated with food production and consumption? So a long title, a very interesting research. Over to you now, Mebrak.
Thank you very much. That might be a little different from the usual thing that I do on a daily basis, which is more, local Sussex, small research. But this issue is deep to me, being of a woman of both cultures. So I thought I'll be given an opportunity to explore that. So I call it two sides of the same coin. Because to me, global inequality and excessive consumption by the global north are two sides of the same coin, and unless you do them both, it would be difficult to resolve the issue of environment. Second, please. Am I sharing myself or?
No, I am.
Okay. So I am Mebrak Ghebreweldi. I came from Eritrea as an international student in 1992. And as I said, my research is exploring a little the global inequality within the middle class communities of the local area where I'm based. As I said, I'm interested in this subject because I lived through it. So next, please. And the living experience is because I am Eritrea, a country with a lot of resources, a lot of conflict, a lot of war. I'm sure you're aware. Migrations, and also I am quite familiar with Ethiopia. I speak the language of both countries, where we drink their coffee on a daily basis. And I traveled to Zambia, Kenya, all countries perceived by the developed country as poor, but full of resources. And in addition to that, I did small research, big research in terms of ethnic minority, which 50% of them are under the poverty line. So in addition all that, I thought I'll do a bit of exercise in researching. Next, please. Of course, when you do research, you have to read and you have to do literature review in terms of what is other people say and what do I find in other books and other research, and the hundreds and hundreds of them in terms of land grabbing, in terms of displace those people, in terms of investments, with global investors and some local investors. And you can go on, and there's so many references regarding that, including the Friends of Earth, which the big publishment in Europe 2010. Next, please. And of course, we have to, however small it is, we have to go through the research ethics. And I use qualitative because I want to have focus groups and one-to-one interview as well. So I use very conversational style, and I have interviewed 8 people in total, and I have 5 people in my focus group. Okay, next, please. So these are, I'm not going to go one by one, but some of the questions were there. Do you have any things in your kitchen, cupboards, and so on and so on, just to bring how inequality manifests itself. And yeah, next, please. So the research questions would be on my appendices, so I'm not going to go through them further. So if I can go next. The analysis is that people say no, they never check where their food is coming from. Sometimes they say we check and it's visible when you see it on banana because it comes from Costa Rica. So those kind of things are what I found. People are not aware of where their food come from. They're not aware of the global inequality. They are more aware of the environment. The environment, the footprint is much more important. Keep going. Next. And some of the finding is that we have 4 children, we have big fridge, we have big freezer. What do you want us to do? We need to feed them, and we finish some some of them, but we don't finish the others. So this is the kind of information that I get, and in terms of their personal privilege, they would say, yeah, you know, we are a bit greedy here. But I think in terms talking about global inequality, it's the job of the big organizations. It's the job, you know, the people that cause in this global inequality, that are big companies like, you know, Nestle, but also global inequality is too big for us. You know, we just, you know, it's a job of the UN, it's a job of the World Bank. So there is acknowledging that we are greedy here, but, you know, it's too big for us. We just want the environment to keep going, and we want to reduce the footprint. And that's why I thought, you know, the two sides of one coin. Keep going. Yeah, so I did say that, you know, people thought, you know, it's not our job, it's UN's job, it's World Bank job, and you know, probably these are, if not like the private companies, they are, you know, to me they are the offenders. You know, keep going. So in a nutshell, what I have, you know, what I have found in this is that middle class and as big general, you know, this research is very small, but it is a sign, it is a sample. People think that we are interested in environment. You know, we want to save the environment, we want to save the planet, but reducing consumption and the inequality who might be growing is not our responsibility. It's too big. Keep going. The younger participants have more to say about this, and for them, removing social license and make it mainstream about you know, saving the environment is much more interesting to them. In terms of the global inequality, they say we're not informed enough about this. We haven't been learned about this. There is no curriculum that includes that. So we're not fit to talk about global inequality, but through veganism, through vegetarian, we are aware that we need to save the environment. That is a very interesting, but also they say, we know about fair trade, but we don't have the money to shop, you know, in fair trade. So they are in a middle class because they have degrees and masters. However, you know, economically they're not, you know, they don't have enough income to, they think they are a little powerless in terms of understanding of the global inequality, sorting it out. But their comment to me was the most important: social, removing social license and making it mainstream. And I think that's what the message that I like to pass to this. You know, how do we do that? You know, how do we do that is a question to you. How do we remove social licensing and bring those one coin of inequality, but also, you know, like you know, the planet will carry on with that or without us. How do we bring this to as a community campaign so people can understand how not to shop to fill 2 fridges and 2 freezers, even though they have 4 children? How do we make sure that people are related to where is this coming from? Where is the coffee coming from? So that they can relate to that, to the food that they put inside their stomach. So we can all bring some sort of understanding. So my final, you know, because I'm running out of time. My final intake from this as a person of both cultures and both societies is that equality, whether it's in this country or global inequality, they're the same with excessive, excessive consumption. They're the same with wanting more and not willing to share. And I think it's something that I like you to leave. The question is knocking every door. How do we answer that? are we ready to change our lifestyle? Because frankly, the global north lifestyle is carried on at the cost of the global south. And I think if everybody, if communities, if commissioners, if are not going to address that, the precious planet that we have, we're losing it together. So all the pointers from this focus group, and they are absolutely desperate for education in global equality, and also through that, in terms of how do we save our planet, how do we reduce the footprint, how do we share resources. The main issue is of the global equality is not sharing the resources equally. You can go to Ethiopia, and if you want to buy a Nescafe, it's much more expensive in Ethiopia than in the UK. It's just not fair. Ethiopia is the producer of coffee. How on earth is a coffee growing country not be able to buy a packed coffee jar more expensive? So I just want to leave everybody from my living experience, how do we change our lifestyle? Because global inequality and excessive consumption of production is the same thing. And I think, how do we teach our children? How do we make this mainstream? And how do we address this in our daily life? And it's something that we all have to take and think about. So thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Ya, for your hard work. These are my references. I have a shorter version on this. I emailed it to Alejandra, but probably she didn't get it. So there you go. I've got the long version of that.
Thank you so much, Mebrak. So there's so much food for thought, literally there. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to direct towards Mebrak?
I'm trying to raise my hand. Unfortunately, I think it's freezing. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Please do go ahead.
Okay. Mebrak, you're talking about us taking responsibility and because of consumption. How do we square this? Because there are some factors here that I'm actually thinking about. These are the global factors. I'm thinking about the availability of natural resources. I'm thinking about the economic systems. I'm thinking about technology. I'm thinking about education. And the biggest one I'm thinking about is politics. Yes, we have responsibility, but we have got to battle these 4 or 5 areas, especially politics, and playing the power game in actually controlling those that have got and those that don't have.
When I was a child in Eritrea, there was a big fighting, and my mother, and my father has to take us quite away from the main road. And when we get to the mountains, they told us that the UN will come and stop this fight. And I waited for the UN to stop it. And I'm still waiting. So to me, I absolutely believe in communities. We need to start at the community level. We need to start at the school level. It's going to take a long time, because it took a long time to develop to get to where we are. It didn't come yesterday. Capitalism is a very sophisticated, well established. But there is a big inequality here. UK is a developed country, but if UK cannot sort out the difference between working class and the middle class and the upper class, I don't expect politicians and governments. They will have they will have a role, but history has shown us that in our entire life we waited. And I think, to me, even it's going to be a small, very tiny difference, we need to start it locally. We need really to start it locally. And I think commissioners and people like you, Gulu, you really have to make sure that let's just make this this life better to our children, because my generation and a bit older than me, I think, you know, it won't sustainable. It's not sustainable the way we go. It's not sustainably, you know, I see this in Africa on a daily basis when I go there. They are living in a very, very tiny fraction of what we spent here. So how do we do that? I don't know, you know, I've always, you know, with the grassroots, I work with the grassroots, and the grassroots are ready to take action. Everyone in my focus group and in my interview, they said they pointed to education, they pointed to community activism, and I think within our power here in this meeting, we could do that. I think the rest I will leave it to the people that, you know, there will be a further, you know, research on this. I'd love to take it further. I would like it to take it to school. I would love it to talk to more people, but you know, we did this because Dr. Ya wanted to develop us as a community researchers, and she put her time, and we're grateful for that, and grateful for you to listen to us. But I don't know how to influence politicians and big commissioners. I can only influence, you know, I can only do grassroots work. So I don't know. I don't know how to change the UN, and I don't know how to change the World Bank, to be fair.
Mebrak, thank you so much for that actually brilliant answer. And maybe it is about going into schools. Maybe that's something that we can talk about. So thank you. And please, if anyone else has got any comments or any ideas and suggestions, please do put them in the chat, or do get in touch with DRI. So that brings us to the end of our first three research reports, which each of them has provided so much food for thought. I think we're going to have a 5-minute break now, and then we're going to come back with Audrius after the break. So maybe if we come back, this is where my mathematics is very bad, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's come back at 16:58 and listen to the rest of the reports. So thank you all very much. See you in a few minutes.
Thank you. Thanks. Hello, yeah.
Hi, Mebrak. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Sarah.
Hello there. Thank you so much for these presentations. They're really, really fascinating. Because you look at the headings and they give an indication, but you don't know necessarily what's actually going to be the content. So they're really, really making me think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
That's what we want.
Yeah, you can talk a lot, the inequality, education, universities, knowledge, technology, everything is, but, where they start, I think, it's a simple, taking a step in the local communities is what you could do, really.
Right. I'm hoping that everybody's back. I can see Audrius, which is great news. And I make it 16:58. So Audrius, let's go over to your research. So it's my pleasure to introduce Audrius, and his research was on to what extent is the mental health and well-being of Eastern European migrants connected to music. Audrius, over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Audrius, and thank you, yeah. I guess this title does go a bit further, he also, definitely for the rest of the world, I guess. Okay, so I'll start with, my name's Audrius, as I said. I came from Lithuania. I work at the moment as a Lithuanian and Russian interpreter. And also thanks to Dr. Yah and everybody else who was involved, I became a community researcher now as well. And recently became a Vandu language ambassador as well. So glad to join the board. Since I come to UK, I had many different jobs, different variety of jobs, starting, I don't know what I haven't done really, from salad fields to construction, from landscaping to senior management and retail. But it all led to be community interpreter, which is I love most. You can wake me up at night and I'll go there and do the work. Obviously taken into account, we all as interpreters, ambassadors, community researchers do things for people, not because of what we can get in return, but because of who we are. Next, please. So by doing this research, I wanted to raise an awareness really, and gently remind us all about the beauty and incredible power of music. So the thing is that it's nothing new I'd like to introduce you, of course. And I believe many people know the benefits of music and what it does to their mental health, physical health, or just well-being in general. But most of them do not necessarily apply nor use the music consciously in a way to enhance their well-being. So basically, to narrow it down, I have chosen to dig deeper and spread the word. Just like you may share some good news, facts, or results with someone who knows someone. And I guess in the beginning, I had some sort of assumptions that you know, the Eastern Europe is so huge, and you know, might be the differences in between where the people are from. They have maybe some sort of a different perspective to things, but no, it seems to be that it's the music is, everything is around us, you know, more like a range sounds put together in order to make you feel relaxed, joyful, motivated, sleepy, perhaps inspired. As I mentioned previously, you know, the folk music, you know, my assumption at the beginning, it was research. I thought there would be a deep connection among Eastern European migrants to folk music. However, it turned out to be not the case. In general, the music improve our focus, and in general helps us to be happier and healthier. Next, please. I, of course, carried out a literature review to support all the evidence found and how it can be helpful in relation to people's mental health and well-being. So obviously music improves our people's daily lives by engaging and listening to playing, singing and dancing. And obviously I carried out research to support that information and to raise awareness of benefits from music. For tens of thousands of years, people have been making some sort of music. There was a bird song, people had sticks banging into some sort of a tree trunks and making some noise, making a rhythm, animal skin to make a drum. So by putting sounds in order, they were creating a rhythm and some sort of a melody, you know. From the rhythm evolved a dance, from the rhythm and dance, the song was created. And folk song created in different cultures and countries. So the Stambra states that in 2009, an archaeologist excavating a cave in southern Germany uncovered a flute carved from a vulture's wing bone. So the delicate artifact is an oldest known musical instrument on Earth, indicating that people have been making music for over 40,000 years. Although we can't be sure when the humans began listening to music, but scientists do know something about why we do. So obviously listening to music benefits us individually and collectively. As I mentioned, music literally changes the brain. So neurological researchers have found that listening to music triggers the release of several neurochemicals that play a role in brain function and mental health. Next, please. So what that does, obviously, creates a dopamine, which is a chemical associated with pleasure and reward centers. Also, the stress hormone like cortisol, serotonin and other hormones related to immunity, oxytocin, a chemical that fosters the ability to connect with others. Thank you. Next. Just would like quickly to introduce you with Eastern European musics, the origins of music. So Eastern European folk music called Romani comes from Russian travelers, gypsies, brought back from the northern India. Part of Romani music for local use in Eastern Europe, and a separate Romani music originated for entertainment and parties and celebrations. So the music drew its themes from Hungarian, Russian, Romanian, and other sources. Yes, I'm from Lithuania, but I have played. I'm a musician also. I have played the Lithuanian and Russian folk music as a musician, but music has been with us for tens of thousands of years, I've mentioned. But they are very, very similar, although Eastern Europe, a huge, huge country. But if you go any part of it, it's quite similar folk music, if you take it. And it also has been proven that, especially listening to classic music, you know, it only needs 10 to 15 minutes to get those dopamines, serotonins, and cortisols working all together. And it's also been proven it acts like an antidepressant. Next, please. So yes, I had 3 interviews and a focus group of 6. I tried to gather participants from all range of the countries in Eastern Europe to discuss the connection of music to their mental health and well-being. Music has shown a profound link, and I am positively sure that this is the case for the majority of the world's population. Also, you know, the music connects us all, no matter where you are from, what color, race, or age. Next, please. I just would like to share with you some, I added some quotes because I believe that they are inspirational, reflective, interesting, informative, and show the expression of a wide range of the thinkers from all walks of life from a different historical periods of times, how important music is to everybody. So we can learn that music is in the lives of everybody, and it's a fundamental piece needed in life. So yes, please, I would like to share that this, for example, music, what a powerful instrument, what a mighty weapon. That quote came from Maria August von Trapp, which is a von Trapp family matriarch. Also, she's inspired, was behind the scenes of a great music of Sounds of Music. Probably all we know about that.
2 minutes, Audrius.
Yep. Pardon?
2 minutes.
Oh, I see. As you can see, maybe I don't necessarily need to read about it, so you have a chance to catch up with the quotes. So I can just go to the next slide, please. So obviously, research matters. I've started by calling, texting people, and just not ask them to participate, but ask them if they know somebody from somebody else, just for me to stay totally impartial. And just I don't know them, so it could be unbiased, impartial, just make that connection with them. I won't be telling you all the questions in the report that will be there. There's 7 questions of for the interviews, and there were 3 questions for the focus group. So yes, please, yeah, on the next one. So obviously, ethical considerations I had to take. According to the ethics of Principal Warden Garrigan, I took these into consideration. The first was obviously trust. That it was felt that one of the most important things, although I did not most of the really them, but I was able to explain what would happen during the interviews and focus group sessions. I also was assuring them confidentiality and make sure that the participants were going to be comfortable and any concerns or worries would be addressed straight away. The other one was responsibility. Obviously, I needed to gain trust and allow the sessions to be recorded. I explained how we use the recordings and what I will do with them after. Also made sure that there were participants that if they got stuck with any of the questions, I would support them by offering some helpful prompts. Also, finally was attentiveness. We agreed at the time scale previously discussed. Participants met in the participant houses at the gardens for the focus group, and I made sure the social distancing was considered. Outside in the park, COVID compliant. Although I didn't want to waste anybody's time, however, everybody wanted to stay after and to discuss further. That's how interesting was that. Obviously, thank you. Next, please. I interviewed, of course, people from all different, as I mentioned, parts of Europe, and my research was really stressed out how important, uplifting, inspiring, therapeutic, and enabling music is to them. So I split in 3 parts: how music is uplifting, whether during the interviews I have conducted, I found the general consensus revealed how music has an uplifting and essential part of the participants. I had some quotes from the people, also can be seen in a full report. So next, please. So there's very different people with different backgrounds, 4 men, 4 women, different age from 20s to 60s, and obviously Kazakhstan, Latvia, Bulgaria, you name it, from all sort of corners of Eastern Europe. And obviously the full report can be seen later on with all the quotes added in. Thank you. Next, please. It was obviously taken for the equivalent to therapy, how healing is that, soothing it is, and then how important the music is to them as like a depressant. People said that it was sort of like a pill, like a medication. You can, next please, thank you. And these are the quotes to continue, so we can just skip that as well, please. So on the conclusion bit, I just would like to say that my initial interest to do the research was very close to my heart, and actually it still is. For many years, I knew something and has been aware of the music, how it does things to you and how it plays a significant and important to your entire being. So I have always wanted to explore further and find out what's happening, how the music works, why are we experiencing all these sorts of feelings whilst listening to playing, singing, or dancing to it. I realized I love music when I was about just a little in a nappies boy. And the big thing is what I mentioned slightly earlier about it connects us all. It has a link to a bigger picture of shared humanity, no matter who you are, black, white, sick, healthy, happy, sad, down, uplifted, broken or inspired. Music is a part of every known society, past and present, and it's common to all human cultures across the globe. I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much. And sorry if I took your time more than required. These are the references. And yeah, thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Audrius. And I think what is so unique about your research is that it's actually a very, very uplifting piece of research, and it brings us all together. So even though you're researching Eastern Europeans, it tells us all something about the power of something that we all have access to. Questions or comments? Mary, you've put your thumb up. Would you like to make a comment?
Hi, I was just supporting what you were saying, yeah, you know, that actually it's lovely to have something so universal that we can all celebrate and enjoy together, you know. And I love the benefits to our mental health, you know. I thought that's really important, particularly when people are facing such difficult times.
Absolutely. Wanted to have that bit of a different angle from the rest of the researches, and they're all equally important, but yeah, this, you know, just a bit of a slight different angle, you know. Happy moments are there, just need to use them, take them, feel them, have them, cherish them.
Thank you, Audrius. And I think Sarah has also just got her hand up too.
Yeah, thanks, Audrius. I really enjoyed that as someone who, you know, loves music and sings and dances to it, and not very well, but you know. You said at the beginning that you thought that folk music would be particularly a sort of a central point for people, and it wasn't. So does that mean it was just any other music, just a massive range, and it didn't matter what music?
No, yeah, it was absolutely, you know, whoever likes to listen, whatever the music, you know, this is a therapeutic for them. And yeah, initially I thought that, you know, sort of focus of folklore, because maybe some people miss that, you know, because when they come to different country, they get drifted away from their sort of culture, from their folk. And but no, yeah, we have talked about folk music, but it wasn't so grandiose to overtake the rest of it. So yeah, a bit of everything.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the comments and questions. Fantastic. So thank you, Audrius. Let's now move over to Carolyn. And Carolyn carried out a really passionate, if I can call it passionate, research.
Are you preparing them?
And the title, and listen, you will learn, is... Oh,
I was hoping that I could control, because I've done some edits. I was hoping I could post. Is that okay, Alejandra? Can you make me a host?
Alejandra, can you make Carolyn a co-host?
That'd be amazing.
And so the title is African Diaspora Women, How the Third Space Identity is Changing the Narrative and Relationship with Africa. Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Bear with while I set this all up. Right. So as Yor said, I'm researching African diaspora identity. I really want to explore the evolving identity. You may have come across some of these terms, but diaspora, if anyone doesn't know, means people who have been raised away from their home countries or countries of heritage. So a little bit about me, I'm Carolyn Baguma, and I'm a leadership and development strategist and consultant based in Hove. And I have had the fortune of working with amazing communities in development for youth, for business, and just general well-being, socially led projects. So I'm really, really excited to be joining DRI as a community researcher and to be researching something that's so close to my heart. So just so that we reiterate, it's African diaspora, how the third space identity is changing the narrative and relationship with Africa. The definitions to be aware of are third space and hybridity basically mean a mixture that form your identity. And then essentialism, which is another one that was very key to my research, is attributing universal qualities to any one group or individual. So just in case you had never heard those terms before. So my real aspirations for doing this research is that I obviously am an African diaspora woman. I was born in Kenya, but my family is Ugandan, and I was raised in the UK from about the age of 6. So I've had a mostly Western upbringing. And I really wanted to understand how our identity impacted by our cross-cultural upbringing. So I don't know if any of you have heard this term before. Oreo, obviously, I don't mean the cookie. I mean a term that has been used to describe women like me, meaning Black on the outside and white on the inside. And it was basically describing you presented Black or African, but your accent, your behavior, your socialization was Western, and therefore was associated with being a white trait. And the first time somebody ever really said that to me, it was because of my accent. And I remember thinking that's absolutely insane, that they think I'm trying to be a white girl because of the way I sound. But it left me really thinking that Black women were not perceived as eloquent, literate, intelligent, smart, all of those things. And it's interesting that a lot of the participants in my research had actually heard this term growing up. So they seem to be almost a barometer for Blackness. So anyway, African, not very Black, all of those things. So my research, I used 3 pieces of literature, 3 books that I love very much, Black Skin, White Mask, Girl, Woman, Other, and Natives. And I chose these books because they explore the diaspora identity through their lived experience, each capturing different perspectives from experiences in Western society. So Black Skin, White Mask is post-colonial, and it's really about how, exploring how a Black man moves in the world. But it was written in 1952, and yet it's so relevant, and it really helped me really evaluate terms like Oreo. Girl, Woman, Other, very close to my research. So again, it's really exploring 12 female diaspora women's identities. And then lastly is Our Colors, Native, definitely not least. It's a really great exploration on the evolution of Black British identity. So these were my 3 books that really set the tone for my research. My research methods were to interview 3 women one-to-one. I chose women, obviously, for obvious reasons. And I also delivered a focus group in London. And I actually chose to deliver it in London because I recognized that I didn't personally have many diaspora women contacts in Sussex. As a Londoner, most of my community, diaspora communities in London. So I went out there and I delivered a great event with 8 women. So in that, I also practiced certain ethics of care principles, responsibility, competence, and trust. So responsibility, I was very aware, like discussing identity, the impact on well-being. So I took that very seriously, making sure I briefed people and talked to them before and like letting them know, preparing them for what to expect. But I also made sure that I anonymized names to protect their privacy. And I briefed them on all the terminologies and any kind of learning and knowledge around identity that'd be relevant. For competence, obviously they all completed consent forms, kept to timekeeping, and had to make sure that I recorded audio, because you can imagine this is a big discussion, especially with outspoken Black women. It was a really enjoyable event. And then lastly was trust, which I think I was able to establish really quickly because they knew I shared their lived experience. But we also established respect and non-judgment, so people can share their experiences really freely. And post the sessions, I sent a follow-up email with recommending all the literature, as well as a really great article on hybridity by Gloria Pindi. So these were the research questions I had. I found that questions 1, 2, 4, and 5 were particularly interesting for their insight, especially around heritage and where they call home, how they describe their identity, how this has impacted their sense of belonging and how it's contributed to their lives. So my main learnings from this were our definitions of home. Now, I think a lot of them recognize, I believe a lot of them recognize their heritage as an innate part of their identity, despite their limited experience in their home countries, but not all of their identity. They really it highlighted how they don't find belonging in only one place and they don't feel that they need to. And then intersection, most of the participants identified as Black, as it better represented the intersectionalities of their hybrid identity. And lastly was representation. So we discussed how representation of Black and African women has influenced the form of our own identity and really highlighted the pressure to conform or seek an alternative identity that breaks you away. Some key quotes from my time with them. Home is always somewhere I'm trying to return back to, and my outlook on life is going back to this safe space for me. Everything I am is pulled back to there. Growing up in Europe, I kind of felt like I had to live up to stereotypes of Black women to feel accepted. If you live in a predominantly white area, you're very much forced to live up to the stereotypes because you yourself are not seeing a lot of Black people represented. I have to be strong. There's no other choice. I have to survive, especially as a Black woman in the Western world. I think these quotes are very telling of our lived experience. So my learning from it was basically that there's a very complex relationship between belonging and identity. Black British identity really gives us the space and the freedom to explore our sexuality and our spirituality. And third space identity really allows us more fluidity and freedom to evolve. And my personal learning from my research was really like that African diaspora or Black women want to have the freedom to form their identity without limitations. And that our hybrid identity that is formed is really a gift and not an identity crisis. Next slide. All right, so these are my recommendations in terms of addressing some of these things. I think access to more information and education around heritage would really help. Support for practitioners, and education on hybrid identities and those experiences, and opportunities for us to collaborate with the African continent. And I think that can only happen if we support change makers on the ground in Africa to recognize the value of the hybrid identities of the diaspora community that I know that they really want to engage to come back and to be part of their home countries. So why is this important? Okay, so obviously women generally have to navigate, perceptions of their potential, lack of role models, lack of career information or mentoring, career breaks, not recognizing their responsibilities for care, and also just lack of talent spotting. But it's double for Black women who face race and gender discrimination. Some of the stats that support that are research conducted by Operation Black Vote that found that 3.5% of Black people are at the top of the UK's leading 1,000 plus organizations, with less than a quarter of those positions being held by Black women. And in the race in work research, 40% of Black women say they need to provide more evidence of their competence compared to 28% of white women and 14% of men. And in terms of race disparity audits, they found that Black women are the group that's most likely to have experienced a mental health disorder, such as anxiety and depression. And there really is already a need for more support and access for mental health care for Black women in the NHS.
2 minutes, Carolyn.
I'm nearly there, which is great. I talk fast. So my learning is that basically, despite all the things that we have coming against us, Black women are the fastest entrepreneurial group amongst women, and they are continuing to grow as business founders. They found that since 2014, there's probably been over 600% rise in female Black business founders, and are probably raised even more during the pandemic due to, unemployment, furloughs, all those kind of things. And I just think it's amazing that you still manage to go forward and stride and imagine what would happen if we actually had the support. So thank you. That's me in my research. Thank you to Dr. Yar for being an amazing mentor, advisor, and thank you for Mebrak for inviting me. I'm so glad I did this. I didn't realize I needed to do it until I did it. And I really feel like it's going to be a platform for so much of the other work that I do. any questions, my references are there.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. There's so much in there. It's so packed. Well done for getting through it in time. Has
I talk fast. I'm going to stop sharing, yeah?
Gulu's got their hand up, but let's go to someone else, because Gulu, you've been amazing. You've really participated, but it would be great if someone else could also ask something. But if not, then
Gulu might inspire everybody.
Okay, let's go for it then. Go for it, Gulu.
If there is anyone, I'm happy to wait until they've asked.
There is nobody else.
Thank you. Right. Two things really. I would have loved to have had what the ladies from the Southeast would have said. Now, the reason being, it's a bit different living in London, cosmopolitan city in London, and those that actually, I come from Zimbabwe myself originally, and I've got a wide base of Zimbabwean ladies living in the Southeast. I would have loved to hear what their views would have been.
Well, 3 of my interviewees were from the Southeast, so they were in Sussex. But the focus group, I was just very aware of making sure I had a good group there. So especially if you think about how the communities especially in East London, a lot of us are connecting to our diaspora community there. And it's, it's very easy to find communities in London a lot more. But yeah, I would have loved to have done it in Sussex as well. But when I looked at it, I was like, no, that's Caribbean. No, and I was looking specifically for African. So I just realized personally in Sussex, I didn't have as many. And the ones that I did, I went straight to.
Excellent. Now, how much has it been of a burden, or how much is the burden to try and be the self, yourself, and also try and actually conform to the cultural dictates of coming from Kenya? I know probably Kenya would have the way women have to carry themselves, and then of course wanting to be the self.
I mean, you saw one of them was like, you're not very African. I get that in Africa. So it's kind of, a long time ago, I had to let go of that. I didn't fit into a norm or an idea. And I kind of feel like in letting go of that, I was able to kind of go into different spaces. But I recognize that that's a privilege that I experienced. But I was told always that I wasn't African enough or I wasn't Black enough. So it kind of did feel like a burden, because I kind of just looked at, there's a difference when you look at, because people are like, you're African, that's it. Like, you don't have to tell them. But when you don't present that like that. So it's now that I'm recognizing, okay, because I grew up here, it wasn't very hard for me. But I also recognize that because of the influences, that it's really impacted how I see things and how I move and how I'm able to code switch. I don't know if you all know about code switching, and that comes from growing up in spaces. I mean, I've been told I'm not very East London. Like I've had an East London go, you're not from East London. And I'm like, I'm from all of East London, but I don't sound like it, and maybe I don't present like it. So it's just that whole pressure to conform. And once you know that you don't do it already, you kind of have the freedom to just be like, I'm that awkward Black girl. I don't know if you've seen that series. It's a cultural reference.
Carolyn, thank you. Thank you so much. I think with all of these, each presentation could be half a day's workshop. I really do feel that, but I think your presentation has just maybe opened up some eyes to the complexity, and also to the courage and the assertiveness of reframing yourself. So thank you so much for that. So let's move on, and I'm really happy to introduce Juliet Bastista. And her research was on how the Portuguese-speaking community in Eastbourne has been impacted by the restructuring of the GP practices and the changes in GP booking processes that have happened in the last year. So it's a very long title, but it needs to be that long. It's necessarily long. So Juliet, over to you.
Okay, hello everybody. Next slide. We can go back one. That one, yeah. So I'll just introduce myself briefly, because not many of you know me. I was originally born in Brighton, so grew up in Sussex. And then I've lived in various different places. From 2001 to 2014, I lived in Brazil. I went out and set up a charity called Cooking for Life. As the charity, we trained unemployed people, young people, to be chefs and waiters. We helped them find jobs. We talked to local areas, to local restaurants and local cafes. We visited them, we counseled them. It was a project that included everything. And as part of the project, I did community research, although I probably wouldn't have called it that without really being aware of what I was really doing at the time. So we researched the local areas as to why people were unemployed, what were their own barriers, maybe their expectations, their hopes, their or lack of belief in themselves. What research we talked to the employers, we talked to the restaurants, what did they want an employee, why wasn't it working out with people? And we looked at all the different barriers, all the different issues, and then we used that to design the course that we actually set up at Cooking for Life. And then we continued carrying on research throughout it as things changed. So that the course, we add things into the course and maybe remove things, or if we had a feedback, the punctuality or something like that, then we'd add that in. So as we went on, we'd carry on doing research and carry on changing the course so that when they finished the course, the students had actually really learned everything, and all the issues like a lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence or interview skills were addressed through the course as well. So I wouldn't have called it community research, but looking back, that's effectively what I was doing. I moved back to the UK in 2015, took a while to decide what I wanted to do, and then decided I wanted to work as an interpreter and bilingual advocate, so studied for that. And then since the COVID, I've been working with DRI as an outreach worker, supporting the Portuguese-speaking community in Eastbourne. I started off with, I think, 1 or 2 people that I'd met through appointments, and then they have continually been referring me to other people who need help. So that is how I got to know, more of the Portuguese-speaking community in Eastbourne. Okay, next slide. So through part of my work with the community, I realised that there was a major issue with contacting the GP, either to book an appointment, to get a prescription or a sick note. And one of the main issues people are talking about, I can't go with the GP, I've got this health problem. And so that's why I decided to do my research on that. So since COVID started, there'd been a lot of major changes within the GP practices in Eastbourne. Several of them have merged together to become one, Victoria Medical Centre, and even the ones that hadn't merged have significantly changed their processes because of COVID. So I wanted to find out what the Portuguese community's view on this was, how it compared to pre-COVID. I mean, pre-COVID, it could have been any date. I'm just using that as a date, as a sort of before and after, and then suggestions and recommendations. And a lot of the findings would actually apply to any community. There's a lot of the issues they've been addressing that English-speaking communities would be addressing as well. But there's some issues that are particularly because of lack of interpreters as well. Next slide. So I read 3 pieces of literature. The first one was an article published in 2010 about Portuguese migrant workers in the UK, in Norfolk. This mentioned that most of the immigrants who come over are generally not very skilled and don't speak much English, coming over because of lack of employment opportunities in Portugal, and then end up working a lot of hours or antisocial hours and actually aren't able to learn English while they're here because of the hours they're working and the low salaries that they're earning. And so quite often they don't end up learning sufficient English to be able to go to the GP on their own, or to talk on their own. And that did relate to the people I've been working with, in that the jobs they're doing are generally the lower paid jobs. They're also very physically demanding. Most of them do cleaning. Some of them said they've been working since they're 13 or 14 continually, and always very manual jobs, which obviously this then affects their health. And a lot of them have a lot of long-term health issues, particularly as they get older because of this. The second article is the NHS Constitution for England, which I won't go through now because most people know the pledges and the commitments of the NHS. And then the other book was recommended to me by Hilary Cotton, Radical Help, How We Can Remake the Relationships Between Us and Revolutionise the Welfare State. Extremely interesting. Basically, the book argues that when the welfare state and the NHS were set up, the conditions were very different and the needs were very different to what they are now. And at the time, the welfare state and the NHS was perfect for the conditions when it was set up, which was a lot of short-term illnesses, emergencies, for example, a broken arm, broken leg. And the NHS is excellent at resolving short-term issues. You go, you get better, you get treated. However, the situation today, there is a lot of long-term illnesses, of which sometimes people get better, sometimes they won't, particularly physical illness and particularly long-term mental illnesses. And these need continuing support from GPs, from hospitals, from specialists. And the NHS isn't really set up to deal with these long-term issues. The book also says that there's a failure of communication within the welfare state. Lots of different departments with different targets working towards their targets and often not communicating with each other. I mean, one of the quotes in the book says also that the welfare system promotes inequality because it doesn't actually address the current health needs. And so there's people are still stuck quite often, as the book says, in the situations for many years. This was very interesting related to my research because out of the people I've been interviewing, 4 of them have long-term illnesses and they need frequent contact with GPs or hospitals. Some of them have cancer, some of them have, and so they can't afford to not be able to contact the NHS when they need it. Also, there seems to be a lack of communication when restructuring the GP practices in Eastbourne, as we'll see later from the results, which has caused a lot of issues and which are still going on today. Next slide. So my research methods, I did 6 interviews, 6 different people from the Portuguese-speaking community, 5 women, 1 man. They're all aged about 45 to 60. And between them, that covers 5 different GP practices. All of them have health issues. 4 of them have long-term health issues and are unable to work at the moment. Each interview was about 10 to 15 minutes. I didn't do a focus group because most of them were vulnerable because of COVID and there wasn't anywhere we could all get together that would be a low risk. And so I thought it would just be something that was too much of a risk and too stressful for them to do a focus group. And then all the interviews were transcripted, which is added onto my final report. Next slide. Yes, I went through the ethical considerations. I won't go into detail here of building up trust, responsibility, and attentiveness. Next slide. So in terms of the findings and analysis, so there were 5 GP surgeries were represented. So
2 minutes, Juliet. 2
okay.
minutes.
From best to worst, Arlington Road. So just to go back, so before COVID, there were no complaints at all for any of the GP practices. After, so the situation now, Arlington Road, no complaints. Seaside Medical Centre, sometimes not. Lighthouse Practice, there are complaints. But 2 worse, definitely Bolton Road and Green Street, which are now part of Victoria Medical Centre. Okay, everybody who goes there is always complaining. Next slide. The worst is booking appointments. There's lots of stories of, particularly in Victoria Medical Centre, you have to call 8 o'clock in the morning. People are on the phone 2 hours. Then they get through, there's no appointment. They can't book anything. They can't, quite often the phone just gets disconnected after 2 hours. And even if they do manage to book an appointment, they can't get an interpreter because it's too short notice. And the appointment is very, very rushed and the GP doesn't really deal with anything except one quick issue. Requesting sick notes and prescriptions, it's not that easy, but people are managing to sort that out. Next slide. So these were the recommendations of participants. All of them say go back to the way things were. Some of them prefer booking online, some prefer going to the surgery, some prefer phoning. They all need interpreters, and more choice of dates. So they'd like to be able to choose a GP, for example, if they want a woman or a man, and the written or electronic sick note. Next slide. So the conclusions are that the NHS pledges and commitments at the moment in these practices, apart from Arlington Road, are not being fulfilled. Before the practices were restructured, there was no discussion with the local communities. There was still major problems and difficulties when booking an appointments. And just to add on, I've got another lady who was with another practice which closed. She's now gone to Victoria Medical Centre. She's asked me to help her book an appointment. I've spent this week and I haven't been able to book one for her. So the issue is still going on. And there's also a complaint when you get the telephone appointment, it's very rushed. The GP just asks a couple of questions because they haven't got the time. No interpreters, too short notice. So a lot of people, their health problems are not being treated, not being resolved. And I said, sick notes and prescriptions are not so much problem. Next slide. So recommendations, again, consult with the local communities before making any decisions. Should be easy to be able to access help and support from the GP as people need it. People should have the option. Some prefer to go online, some prefer to phone, some prefer to go to surgery, some prefer to use the app. More availability and interpreters provided. Next slide. Yeah, so just thank you to Dr. Ya for setting up this course, for teaching us all the skills that we need, for encouraging us, inspiring us. Thanks to all my fellow students as well for giving suggestions, and we can talk, we talked everything through. And also thanks to my participants who obviously aren't here at the moment. And well, yes, that's it. So if anybody's got any questions or anything.
Juliet, thank you so much for that. I would just like to read what Antonia has put on the chat.
I'm still here, yeah.
Oh, great!
Yeah, I really do have to go. My son's going to be wondering where I am, but I just want to say, Juliet, I'd really like to connect with you if that's okay. I think that was quite a realistic, although damning, report about GP practices, and it's something that we're so aware of, and it's a national problem. But I know in Eastbourne, with the closure of the walk-in centre and the merger of the practices to Victoria Medical Centre, we're hearing this a lot, and I've been to quite a few forums, so it'd be really great to catch up with you maybe outside this meeting just to talk about it in a bit more detail and how we can kind of take forward some of those recommendations.
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant. So I'm really sorry I've got to go, but if I could get your email address maybe through DRI, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That'd be great.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Antonia. We really appreciate that.
It will speak soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Juliet, thank you so much. I just wonder if anyone's got a short question or comment for Juliet before we move into our last presentation. Has anyone else got anything they'd like to say or ask? Okay, thank you, Juliet. And I think what's really powerful about your presentation was that the recommendations were coming from the participants themselves. So thank you so much for that. So we now have our last presentation by, ironically, the first person to finish. She was the star of the course and persuading everyone else to get a move on and to finish themselves. Very, very quickly followed by Carolyn, I must say. So Ling, over to you. So your research was on how do older Chinese women residents in East Sussex access information and knowledge to look after their health. So over to you now, Ling.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're not too tired after 2 hours. I just want to just go over as quick as possible. My personal experience is I've been working with the Chinese community in East Sussex for a while, and I've been a community development worker, and so been advocate and interpreter in healthcare. So I have sort of a lot of understanding and working with the Chinese community and about the healthcare as well. Next. My priorities is I always have Chinese women was, their focus is mainly on the healthcare priorities, and they're always asking about the three highs. What are the three highs? Is high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and high blood sugar, diabetes. So these are the three things which is not obviously to recognize or see it. The symptoms are very sort of not like heart attack or something, but and also I like to talk about the how much they understand about the health eating and exercise, and have they got any support from the GPs, and have they got any translated leaflets related about to eat healthy. Next. My literature is come upon this with my supports, and I find out that as we say that 1 in 3 diabetic patients in the world are actually Chinese, and and also the older people over 65 have 6 times more higher than young people have diabetes, isn't it? Yeah. And the next one is about the cholesterol. Is about 20% people of Chinese have high cholesterol and cardiac vascular problems, and it has been increased. That's the fact. Next. And also because of Chinese tradition and culture, they always have a different approach to health, because they tend to be, they're low profile, they don't like to ask for help. And also about their way of looking, the Chinese community look at the balance and the harmony of food is very different from the Western world. And we looking about the attitude of Chinese to access healthcare. They tend to be self-assessment and self-management instead of first thing they go to the GP. And also we find out that compared to 43% of general populations with long-term illness, only 20% Chinese are using the NHS service. So you can see that they are the lowest number of the percentage that they for the Chinese for the BME community to access to health service. So what are the reasons behind it? Next. I realized that up to this literature report, as a research, I found out that the reasons is the language barrier, and also self-manage and self-assess to healthcare. That's what the Chinese like to do. They like to manage their own medicine. They like to self-assess that they think they're not feeling well, or maybe I should take this medicine or take this food that help me. And they find, and also one thing is that they find it difficult to book GPs, and because of the long waiting referrals, this seems like they don't want to bother the GPs on the NHS health. And also with the supports I find out is about the Equality Act 2010, which mentioned that some public bodies will have to rethink about how they can help to stop people doing less well than other people. So they have the responsibilities to look after the people who are different and to treat them as fairly and equal. Next. So part of that is we're talking about the 2013, the NHS Constitution about the duty and responsibility. Next. And my research method is the same as most of my colleagues. Is I did 3 one-to-one interviews and 1 focus group, 7 women, and also prepare the ground rules, timing, focus on the question, and do the transcribing, all the conversations, recording, and put it in my report. Next. And we followed the research ethics, which is about attentiveness, responsibility, and trust. Next. The findings about the and the analysis is the I find it's the lack of after the interviews. I think there's they don't have translated leaflets and information from the help for healthy living for the Chinese community, and also because of the changing diets of the Chinese community increase the risk of high cholesterol and diabetes. We can see that because of the they're not like in 100 years ago, the Chinese community tends to be eating more food that they cook for themselves. Now they have they have money, they will spend more money on eating in restaurants or processed food as well. And also the language barrier and the Chinese traditional nature that make them reluctant to seek the help. As I mentioned before, they tend to be, don't want to trouble others. So they do not like to make a fuss about the health, and also they like to be low profile. They're not good at lobbying for better services. So they keep a kind of low profile, and then they just don't want to ask for more help. And then and also through my research, I find out that they rather to take the balance of foods before they taking the medicine was suggested by the doctors, because they always think eating healthy or eating certain type of foods is making them better, and they're very reluctant to take Western medicine. Next. And also I find out about the Equality Act and the NHS Constitution, that they have to looking after the Chinese community and also other communities who have difficulty use the public services. So my conclusion, next please, next slide. My conclusion is that because of the Equality Act and the NHS Constitution, that they have to commit to help the Chinese community to access to the service. And because we mentioned about the Chinese culture and the nature, they tend to be less, they're low profile, they don't like to ask for help, and they don't like to cause a fuss. So, and also they tend to be care about the food diet more than seeking doctors for medicine, for pills. So and also there's I found out there's no translated leaflets and information given to the Chinese communities about living healthily. And the lack of interpretation support in hospitals and GPs, and that's one thing that we find out that the Eastbourne and Hastings hospitals actually they don't provide interpreters for the people. So there's a lot of people telling me that when they turn up, there's no interpreters, and the doctors have to cancel the consultation, which is cost a lot for the hospitals as well. And the trend of Chinese community to a changing diet, that is the thing because of busy lifestyle and the wealth and the temptation of food. So, and that means that there's an increase of cholesterol and diabetes in the Chinese community. And also the word of mouth, 2 minutes, okay. The word of mouth from friends and family, that means that they rather listen to the friends and family telling them what to do instead of the doctors. So they tend to be listen to the friends telling them about what kind of food they should eat. Okay, next, the recommendations. Next, please, yeah. The recommendations, I think that is better by this report, and I think the recommendation is achievable. And also it's low budget by running BME health information groups. We're asking about maybe twice a year or 4 times a year with interpreters in there, or you can train up some interpreters to run these groups. And also making available the internet resources from other countries. I realized that Canada, Australia, and other countries already have Chinese translated diet, giving to the people, leaflets to the people. So if the NHS in England want to get resources, they can just look at them and then use that as the guidelines. Provide interpreters for GPs and hospital appointments, cut down the medication budget and long-term illnesses, because if you're looking after people before they get ill, that actually is saving money for the NHS in long term. And also, if you follow these guidelines, you are meeting the duty of care for the NHS and Equality Act as well. Next. Is my acknowledgement to the Chinese community providing me this information. Big thanks to my tutor and other speakers to inspire me, and a big thanks, and I hope that there's a change for the NHS provider in the future. Thank you. And next, and this is all my references to help me, to support me for this research. Okay, thank you. Thank you, that's done.
Thank you so much, Ling. And what incredibly practical, doable and economic recommendations that you made at the end of that. So we have 5 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions or make any comments on Ling's presentation. Sarah.
A bit like Gulu though, if anyone wants to go before me, because I know I've spoken a couple of times, so if there's anyone else, please go first.
I don't think there is, Sarah.
Okay, so I just want to say, so thanks to Ling and all the presenters for your research presentation. They've been really, really fascinating. And although a lot of them obviously focused on the NHS, I think there's a lot that applies in principle to the council as well, and our services and how we make ourselves accessible. So I think there's a lot of learning for us here in the council as well. I suppose it was a question for Ling and actually for everybody, was sort of around doing the community research in your own communities must have been really, really interesting. And I suppose it's sort of what did you learn? What did you find out? What changed in you about doing the community research? Because I'm sure there was a lot of change in your communities and a lot of thinking that you provoked. But what did you get from it? If anyone who's interested in saying.
Okay. Anybody else? Right. When I do this research, because that's what the community always asking me about booking appointment for the blood test for their high blood pressure, cholesterol, and all this, because these symptoms are not easy. And I realized that that's what they want. And I said, what makes them so curious? What makes them such a priority in their lives? And then by finding this out, doing this research, it helps me to sort of, because I am also Chinese and I understand why it is important. Health is very important to them, and eating is very important for the Chinese. So food is important, but they don't know what kind of food is good for cholesterol, high blood pressure, because they think that, well, when you go to, well, any local councils or whatever, the leaflets is based on the Western culture, Western diet, and it doesn't make any sense to them. So actually the leaflets are just useless. One thing is the language, the second thing is that they don't understand about the Chinese, what do they eat. So so when I do this research, I find out that in Canada and Australia, they already established a Chinese menu. So that is, they actually adapt their food to fit in the Chinese community, which it hasn't happened in here yet. And I said, why can't they do it? Because it's such a simple thing. Anybody can go to Google and get the leaflets. And actually, why is England hasn't adapting that yet? Or maybe it's the same for the councillors. I mean, you can adapt by looking at different countries, how they understand the community by adapting your leaflets to that which makes sense to that community. Does it make sense to you? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, can I say, I think to me, I didn't do the research to my own communities. I did to, you know, my communities in the UK, I was absolutely shocked by how much we are manipulated by the, you know, kind of the media, the politicians, the technology, you know, you call it everything, and how this, without us knowing, disconnect us from the very, very human beings that we should care of each other. It's an amazing revelation to me, that reading about how people somewhere else are suffering because their land was grabbed, because, you know, for materials, because for investors, and how is so much manipulated by, including the organizations that we feel that they bring us together, like the World Bank, the International Trade Organization, the UNESCO, you know, you call them, you know, when you read a lot about that, they're not better than the Nestle and all that kind. I'm sure there are something positive, but the community, the grassroots are completely blinded, and not just, you know, looking somewhere, somebody very in a Caribbean or in the island of, you know, Pacific. We are disconnected from each other here in this country, and it's a wake-up call for me personally. So yeah, it has changed me, you know, in a very positive way.
Thank you, Mebrak, for sharing that. And I think there's something for us all to think about in this idea of disconnection. It's after 6, and we did say that we'd finish at 6, so it would be nice now just to hand over to Patrick, just to bring this event to a close. And just before I go, I'd just really like to thank the community researchers for being such incredible people to work with, and for producing such varied and intense and interesting pieces of research. It really has been my pleasure to work with these amazing people over the last few months. And Patrick, please, you know, bring the event to a close. And also, I have to say a big thank you to Sarah as well for arranging and organising this event with so many people here. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yara. And I think that was the first thing I was actually going to say, that, you know, thank you, Sarah. Really, thank you. We're really grateful. And in terms of community researchers and yourself, Dr. Yara, I think I would say I am more than moved, I am more than challenged, and I am also more than inspired by every one of the research. And really, for the presenters, that was amazing, really it was. And as one of the directors of DRI, I am immensely proud and impressed by those presentations. And unfortunately or fortunately, as an academic researcher, I can say the research and the presentations have been of a higher standard than that's what I encounter in my daily academic life. So that was amazing. And Dr. Yara, just probably a personal thanks to you on behalf of everyone. That, you know, we want to acknowledge you for your tireless work, for your inspiration, and everything you've done for the team and the community. And also, I think we should acknowledge Sussex Community Foundation for believing and providing the funding for this. And I guess everyone who has been supportive to the community researchers and their research, including the participants, that is something that we need to acknowledge. And I think I would just encourage each one of you to utilize this resource of community researchers in the deployment within our communities, especially around community-based research initiatives. And, you know, please do get in touch if you'd like to work together on any local research needs, or if you would like to fund some of the research as well, or you would like to learn more about the training that's going on for the community researchers as well. And I think, just to say, I do hope you all have a pleasant, restful evening, and let's keep the momentum going. I really thank you everyone for coming today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all of you. Really, really appreciate all of your time. It's much, much appreciated. And thank you, as I've said, to all of the staff who've attended here as well. Yeah, and as I said in the chat, we look forward to the next round of research and possibly some of it done with the council. That would be absolutely great. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.